Where do you want me?
Yeah.
Why don't you sit here and then you right in the middle? I said, I'm not gonna sit over here. I said, just, yeah. Okay, but you know, after knowing the facts.
You look good. That's it.
Yeah, the audio people tell you, do not hit them.
Oh.
That's all, they say, just do that.
I can't snap anymore, so I can't go.
I was in the Coast Guard 20 years, and then when I retired from that up in Alaska, I worked in local government for 18 years. And so I had to go to meetings like this all the time. Sometimes 3-4 times a month. My wife hated it.
Where at last?
I was in Ketchikan, which is way down,
Oh.
way down the tip of the Panhandle. First stop on the cruise ship itinerary. Or last stop.
I'm
when I was
going
ready
to
to go.
school, I'm hard of hearing.
Nice little town. Look at that.
I have to turn my, but no.
I was the Fort Covers director there for the last 13 years before I retired again, yeah, so. But when I
Not really.
I failed retirement a couple of years ago, and I took this part-time job in performance. Part-time lasted about a month. And then
Yeah.
Pat, can you help me with the sound, make sure we have it? I have
But I
a
told my
problem.
wife, don't have to go to evening meetings at all, you know, but every once in a while, and this, I just do, whatever my boss doesn't want to do, this is the one he can't do every month, so it's gone from multiple times a month to just one time. She still fusses.
Only one week. The other one.
They're landing.
Maybe down just a
Something
little.
like X-Files or something.
Thanks.
Just let the boss know I'm in a meeting now, so. She can text all she wants, but I'm not gonna answer, so.
Oh, it's 6:01.
Jeff?
Yep, sounds good. Well, thank you for coming to the sewer informational meeting. Today, Stephen Corporon is here to answer your questions, bring us all up to speed as to what's happening. It might not look like much is happening out there, but it is. So fire away questions, and Steve.
All right, just for an update then, on the gravity contract, that's Elmer's. As of today, they're pretty much gonna shut down for the next couple of months. They are so close to having all the pipe in the ground. All they really had left was to drill a force main from the lift station at Constance and Arthur, up Arthur and up Floyd, to where the existing manhole to connect to the existing system is near the corner of Juneau and Floyd. And their subcontractor Romer was gonna drill that. They were gonna drill it 3 weeks ago, then it was gonna be last week, and it'll be this week, but they've been trying to get their biggest drill fixed so they can do it all in one shot and not have to dig up in, halfway. But finally, today they just finally said, no, it's not worth trying. Let's wait until the spring. It's not a big deal. They want to get that in. They've been putting all the plumbing in the cleanouts and lift stations. They're just about wrapped up with that. So what they're going to be doing in the spring, They'll be coming back, they'll get that force main drilled. They'll get, the force mains, those get tested with water pressure to make sure that they're all, there's no leaks in any of the fittings, leaks anywhere in the pipe. We'll be doing that in the spring. You really don't want to do that when it's this cold, because then you just freeze everything up. They'll get the restoration work underway. They'll get the roads tuned up and get ready for paving, and they'll probably want to pave as soon as they can get on Reeve Riley's schedule in the spring. The big part of the startup for the heavy equipment stuff of that will be when the frost laws come off. You never know where that's going to be, but usually sometime in April. They're going to, all the equipment you see out there, Romer was going to use it for this last shot. That'll all be going away here real soon. So I know Father Dybel was asking about that. Had a conversation with him a few weeks ago. But all the equipment you see down there should be going away for the winter. Right now, the north side of the Devo Beach parking lot is clear except for one little pile of gravel they've been using to fill in the potholes before everything froze up. And I asked them today if they could just make sure that got scooped up and over to the south side where they're going to consolidate everything there, so it doesn't get completely lost in the snow piles and somebody hits it when they're trying to plow snow and hits this frozen pile of gravel. So that's how the gravity contract's going. They are way ahead of what we thought they would be. I did not think they were going to be this far in my wildest dreams, but it was so dry in August and September, and it really pulled that water table down. On the pressure system contract on the other side of the bridge with Matt's Underground, they're about where we thought they'd be. They're not behind, they're not ahead, they're about where we thought they'd be. They've been kind of plugging along up on Hillside Drive in the Columbus Beach Club, putting in their first few curb stops on the pressure system for the houses all the way at the end of Hillside and drilling those services in. They're going to try and keep going as long as they can. I'm guessing with the single-digit highs forecast for next week, they're probably real close to shutting down for the season as well. They did get their lift stations in. They've been putting the plumbing into those. The electricians for both companies will be putting wiring and all that stuff in for all the plumbing, the pumps and that, and the lift stations. They're both still waiting on Consumers Power to run electrical services to those 5 locations for the 5 lift stations. So we're working with Consumers Power on that with them. They've got all their stuff consolidated down by the boathouse in Columbus Beach Club. The last of the structures that were up off Martha Street are gone. So, any questions on the status of how phase 1 work is going for those 2 contracts? The wastewater plant is chugging along. In December, they poured the first wall of all the tanks there. There's the tanks for the 2 new treatment modules that doubles the plant. And there's also a surge tank that's included in this project that Eagle paid for. So the original plant had 2 modules. We put in 2 more to double it, but this surge tank will also help level things out as well, especially on the high flow days in the summer. The first pour was when they did the huge mat, the bottom of this whole tank. That was a whole day pour, and that was that October. I can't remember when that was.
Yeah, because you were pouring walls.
Yeah. So we poured. It's not 4 walls like that. There's like 4 sections of walls. One's been poured. The other one they're tying rebar on now. It's getting a little slow for the guys. You can imagine being out there when it's 12 degrees out, even with gloves on, picking up bars of steel after bars of steel and tying them together and that. So it's not fun work. But they're working on that. And we hope to, in a couple more weeks, pour the second of the 4 big sections for those walls. The equipment has been ordered. We signed off on all the submittals on that a few weeks ago. The equipment should be here by the end of March. And if all goes well with the pours throughout the winter, then the assembly should be going on in April and the first part of May. And we're hoping, right now their contract, they have to have final completion by June 28th. So sometime before then, the plant should be up and operational. And then we can make a determination, a recommendation to the township on when people can start hooking up. So that's the status on stuff going on. Yes, sir.
So that won't have, no hookups will really start before June 28th?
I can't say there won't be any, because, you know, but I think the soonest you'd see someone would be probably in June.
Early.
I don't think we have to wait till final completion. I think the plant operator would like to have just kind of trickle them on. We don't want to have a slug of them come on all at once. But that's about the time. I think they'll see the first ones, but it could be later if something's not right. That's the status of the current work going on. For the phase 2 contractor, we are meeting with them February 20th. We already had the official pre-construction meeting. USDA representative has to be at the pre-construction meeting and go over a bunch of stuff with them. And so he did that for all 5 contractors in July of 2024. So he said he wouldn't have to come back. But it's been so long, we're having what I call a pre-construction refresher for the contractor that has a phase 2 contract. So we're gonna do that on February 20th. Meet with them, go over their proposed schedule, their sequencing. What I mean by that is they've already told us they're probably gonna start the gravity work on phase 2 in May and the pressure work on phase 2 probably in August timeframe. But we don't know what the sequencing is gonna be. Are they gonna start at the Mack Avenue end of it on the gravity, or are they gonna start at the Barber Avenue end of it? Which way they're gonna work, you know? What Elmer's did on this other one, they kind of broke it up into like 4 different neighborhoods and just opened up that neighborhood, finished it up, worked it, went out to the next neighborhood. We're recommending to the contractor they do a similar approach down here. They're still working on what they think is the best approach as far as how the sequencing is going to be. But as soon as we know what that is, we will let people know so they can start trying to figure out. I know several people, was my street going to be in July? I don't know yet. So as soon as we do, we'll let people know. I am working, now that it's cold and I'm not up here a lot, I'm more in the office. I'm digging into all the requirements, the applications, the Health Department Northwest guidelines, all that stuff, so we can pull together a package, hopefully within the next month or so. The township can give people, we have like about 375 hookups that are gonna be going on in the next couple of years. So we don't want it, we wanna make it so people don't have to start from scratch every time. I wanna try to have the forms kind of pre-filled out for this stuff that will be the same for everybody. So that everybody's not trying to guess what I'm supposed to put in this block or that block. And so, and I'm working on that right now in my spare time in the office. That was a lot of stuff to throw at you all at once. Questions? Yes, sir.
Have you outlined or given a list of recommended people to run the laterals from the house to the lines, or?
Right now, I've got 5 contractors that are interested in doing it. And we're trying to figure out do we want to advertise and see if there's anybody else that wants to go on or not. But
We want people with experience, I think, more than anything else.
right. I can tell you right now what we've got is Bridgewater and M&M. They both said it. M&M took a while to get back to me, but they said, yeah, put us on the list. Matt's Underground, who's doing the phase 1 stuff, and they're doing, I think almost all the hookups for the pressure people over there. They're interested in doing it even on phase 2. And Walton Contracting, who has the phase 2 contract, they are interested in doing it as well, for both gravity and for the pressure sewer hookups. And Mike Troop, who has several properties in phase 1 and in phase 2, he says he does that for a living, so he's interested, put his name on the list, so I have him down there too. But I need to get with all of them as I'm going through the guidelines. They all have to be registered with the county, registered with Health Department Northwest, and that kind of stuff. So I'm not just working with the residents, I'm working with the contractors to make sure they do it right too, so that nobody starts pointing fingers that somebody's not doing it the right way or doing it outside the guidelines.
Because you can't approve a contractor, but, say these are the people we recommend. I don't know if Trudy get in trouble by putting that on the Tuscarora Township website to say, these are the recommended contractors. I don't know if you need to say recommended, but I don't.
I would probably say these are the ones that are interested in doing it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
When did M&M come back in? Because I thought they were out.
I want to say I asked them about a month and a half ago, and
A month
then
and a half.
about a few weeks ago, I finally got, I think it's Scott.
Yeah.
Scott said, yeah, put us on the list. So I put him on the list. Yes, sir.
Yeah, was there a price increase from phase one to phase two? It seems like we're paying a little bit more in phase two. Is that correct? Did I read that right?
The attempt was to try to make it close
Okay,
based on the different interest rate, different amount, and other things. Yeah, but I think we came out pretty close as far as the assessment.
okay.
Yeah, I can't remember, it's within a couple $100, I'm thinking, if I'm recalling what.
It wasn't, it wasn't a lot, but
Okay.
our marching orders from the get-go, from the previous township supervisor, we needed to try and shoot, that was the goal. But, also it depended on the cost of the contracts and that. So when the bids came in the way they were, it was very helpful for us to level it. It came out pretty close.
Pretty well.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And just out of curiosity, why are we paying, the sewer's not gonna be ready till next year in phase two? Why are we paying now? I mean, what was, is there a reason for?
We have interest payments that are due, and Chris helped me, is that 4 times a year? Twice a year. And then once we go live, so for instance, with phase one, once we go live, then we'll also have principal due as well as interest. So we have to start funding that. And the same thing happened this year with phase one. People started paying their, what I call a buy-in. So the same thing will hold true for phase two residents. That will show up, correct me if I'm wrong, Lori, on the December bill for 2025 for their buy-in portion.
The first one in 2024.
Oh, it showed up
This
this year,
year's.
okay, pardon
It showed
me,
up.
my mistake, yeah. So again, we're collecting that and that's, we have interest payments due, we have the loans.
Yeah.
And we're using that money. So we have that interest payment that is due back. And then once we go live. So it's really to everyone's benefit, once the plant goes live, to help you hook up as quickly as possible for your benefit, and then for us, for our financial benefit as well, the township.
Okay.
Yes,
Is there a timeline, Trudy, that the residents have to hook up to the line once it's
well, that's a good question.
operational? Yeah.
Yes, I believe the ordinance, Sue helped me, Chris helped me with this, it's 12 months. There's been some discussion, and I think it warrants looking into, where some people have said, well, what if we have a terrifically horrid winter, very different from this one, that comes in October and never leaves till the following May? We've been shortchanged. I'm sensitive to that, and I think that we need to talk about that. Also, when, like you said, we have 200 and something in phase one, and another 300 or 200, nearly 300 in phase two. If we're all trying to hook on at once and we're all anxious to do it, and the treatment plant operator says, let's take 15 or 20 at a time, how many can we realistically do in a week? So there's a lot of irons in the fire. I believe the ordinance says 12 months, but I think, yeah.
Understood.
Yeah.
I mean, you got really lucky with the weather this year,
Oh,
tremendously so.
mhm.
And,
We may not be so happy next summer, but. Right.
we could-
And part of it is they will have to declare the start of that. Whatever the length of the time, they have to start that. So if they drag their feet, that people can still be hooking up, but okay, you have 12 months or 18 months from this date, they can start that whenever they want. That's up to them.
Well, as Trudy said, it could be mitigating circumstances that would be.
Well, one of the things that I ponder, and I've kind of thrown it around to people in the office and in the hallway or wherever, is we don't want to be willy-nilly hooking up. I like things orderly. Someone mentioned to me, I think Vicki Losh mentioned to me that in the early stages, I think Mr. Kramer and other board members created a the CHIRP program where it was neighborhoods. I like that. I'd like to investigate that further to see, and there's been some discussion, and I think, Chris, you live in a neighborhood where you talk to your neighborhood and maybe you should. Yeah,
Get a
because-
lower price if we all.
yeah, if you all, yeah. So I'm thinking maybe we want to resurrect that and say, are you willing to be a chairperson for your neighborhood to investigate hookups and get in the queue?
Well, or help residents, you know, with that
Yeah.
necessity of hookup, what happens in this process.
Exactly, because we all know that some people come June first and some don't get here till later, or, yeah,
More informed about
exactly.
I thought it was 12 months after the last person was ready to be hooked up.
I thought it was 12 months from the moment that the wastewater treatment plant said we're ready to accept. They have to do their testing. So we'll have to get that out and look at it. We'll need to get that out and look at it. So it's all gonna, in my mind's eye, it's all predicated on when the plant has been completed. They have to test themselves and be declared ready to accept waste. And from that point, I think we could say we're ready for.
The way I read it, you can set it, you would have to, when the plant's ready, you don't have to say
Right.
that's the start. You have to tell people when the start is.
But we have to wait for the plant.
Well, that, physically, yes,
Yes.
but as far as I think legally, it doesn't say you have to start it right then.
Right.
They just have to hook up 12 months from whenever you say.
Right.
You have to.
Right.
So, but I'm not a lawyer, so.
Once they start the hookup, that's when he's gonna start having a monthly bill, sewer bill, or I
Is
don't
it
know.
like a maintenance fee or something?
Sue, do you wanna,
It's operations and maintenance, and it's quarterly.
It's quarterly.
Ooh,
Feeling I don't know how much it is.
for some people.
I don't, that has not been set for these 2 phases yet, as far as I know.
So you're looking at roughly $400 or $500 a month
If there's a
quarterly
big-
payment
No, it's like 109, yeah, but I don't know.
Per month?
No, for the quarter.
I thought it was 100 something a month.
Depends on how big you are.
Yeah, we're not gonna dig it all. We're just gonna.
Just a house, but I mean, like, a lot of businesses are hooked up now that we bill for, different than homes.
I
So
understand.
we've been bringing in those checks as fast as we can, and they're like 109 something. A lot of them are, some of them are bigger. 'Cause they're-
Well, I figured around 100 a month is what I was.
I think it's less than that.
That's
I
for
think if you're
residents.
planning on 100 a month, you'll be ready to
I
go.
hope it's less.
I mean, I'm not sure, but from what I've seen come through the door, it's been less
That's good to
per
know.
quarter.
That's very good.
But yeah, depends on how many REUs. And they just been discussed yet, as far as I know.
not as far as I know.
So nobody's paying already.
No, not from residential, no,
Not the, no.
not from the residential, yeah.
I have a question for Steve.
Yes, sir.
Did I mishear you on phase 2, you said the pressure piping wasn't going in until August?
The last they talked to us, they probably weren't gonna start the pressure system, which is basically the end of Barbara and then out to Sturgeon Island. They were talking maybe August timeframe to start that part of the project. But that was a month and a half ago when they were kind of spitballing that. We're gonna get their actual schedule this next month.
I would think we would have 12 months to hook up. We can't utilize the system prior to that, so.
Right.
Okay, because I heard you say the plant, well,
Well, yeah, that's a discussion that was actually before Trudy
Thank you.
took over, when Bob was up here. When do you start that clock? Do you start it for each phase, for each contract, or do you start it for everybody after everything's done? So, yeah, I don't,
We're gonna have to pull that and read it. more carefully, and this is where some history, we'll have to dig into some history on the discussion, if we can find any notes.
Yes, ma'am.
Are the holding tanks, like there's gonna be one on South Avenue, is that underground or are those?
Yeah.
They're underground. So what, on Arthur Street, you have things that are just tall. Where are those? Down on Arthur?
Everything's underground there except for there's like a gooseneck sticking up.
Oh, then I guess I haven't been down there. Because last time I went down there, there was something that was about this tall. Across. Don't worry
Okay,
about it.
all right.
I'll drive down there and relook at it.
What they're,
Maybe they hadn't hooked it up to anything, or maybe it was just sitting there. But I'm like, oh, that's really ugly.
generally there's like two structures there. In some places there's three. At Arthur Street, there's actually three because a force main comes up from Devo Beach going by that lift station there. And so the lift station from Arthur joins the lift station, joins the flow going from there. So there's actually three structures, but they're all underground now.
Okay, like I said,
The lift station itself,
I'll check tomorrow, no worries.
the lift station itself, they're all 5 foot in diameter, which we'll
Yeah, it
talk
was
about later
big.
tonight.
Yeah.
They're all 5 foot in diameter. The lift station's usually deeper, usually like 14, 16 feet deep. And that's the one that has a little galvanized gooseneck sticking up. Everything else is below ground.
Okay,
And then there's a valve vault next to that
okay.
to help control everything that comes out of there. And then in that spot, there's actually a clean out too, and that's for the force main. They're all underground. They all can be driven on if need be, but we try to keep those out of the road though. So, yes, ma'am.
How is it decided for each individual home whether they can use gravity or they're gonna need some type of pump? And if they need a pump, who pays for that?
Right. The gravity system, we try to make it so that everybody can feed in gravity from their house. In some places, the house is just too low, and so they'll need an ejector pump. What the intent is with this, there's another $1 million grant out there that hasn't come through yet. But the township's intent is the ejector pumps will be purchased with that. And the township would own those, and if they fail, that they will be replaced by the township. They're not as expensive or fancy as the grinder pumps for the pressure system, because all it needs to do is get the stuff up to the gravity line. It doesn't need to push it anywhere, once you get up to the gravity line. The one major difference, the township is paying for the grinder pumps for those people on the pressure system. And USDA, because that stuff is being put in with USDA money, they require an easement between the township and the property owner, so they can do that, provide the pump and maintain the pump and replace it if it fails and that kind of stuff. The ejector pumps will not be paid for by the USDA, so therefore an easement is not needed for that. So we thought they might be. I was working on easements for the ejector pump properties, but we put that on hold when we realized we didn't have to have an easement for that.
So worst case scenario, let's say there's a problem downstream from where you live. And worst thing happens and everything backs up. Who fixes it?
Vector truck.
When you say, well, the township,
Like if there's a plug and it's not working correctly, who comes and remedies the
You
problem?
get a red flashing light on the thingy and the gal shows up, that happened at Pat Gary's the other night. The fire truck right up from my house and the thing outside of there had a flashing light and within minutes the girl from the treatment plant was there to figure out what was going on.
right,
Right?
and then,
It
right,
was.
and then,
Yes, I sent Trina a message, I'm like,
Right,
what
now
the
the-
thing is flashing?
the township doesn't have a public works department, or they have a contract operator in that, but they don't have, municipalities that I've worked with before, they have a big thing, they have their own Vector trucks, so those guys would show up and need to. Here, I assume they would have to contract out for a Vector truck, if they needed to suck something out, or clear it, something like that.
So is each house kind of on their own? Or do they have to worry about the houses downstream for them, there being a problem down there that's going to affect them?
Every house will have a check valve, so there shouldn't be anything coming to your house that's from someplace else.
How many lift stations are there?
There's gonna be two north of the bridge, one at Prospect and Chippewa Beach, one down by the boathouse at the end of Pier in the Beach Club. So those are the two pushing everything north of the bridge up to, there's a manhole right at the south end of the bridge, in between the bathroom and the bridge. There's the extension of River Street as you go across. You'll see that we cut some pavement right there. That was an existing manhole, so all that stuff's going into the existing system right there.
Okay.
On this side of the bridge in phase one, you've got one at the Pinehurst at Lake and Poplar. You've got one down at Constance and Arthur, and you've got one down at Depot Beach. And that's pushing everything up, and that'll be going up Floyd, where this 4-inch force main is gonna be drilled in the spring now, and dumped into the system at that existing manhole. And then in phase two, there were gonna be 4, we reduced it by 1, it's gonna be 3. There'll be one at the end of South Avenue, there'll be one at the end of Mac, and one down at Dora's Place and Barbara, that whole really goofy intersection down there.
Oh, yeah.
And that's pushing everything from phase two up. It'll be going up Birchfield to an existing manhole on the east end of Birchfield.
So will they have their own generating plant in case the juice goes out? I mean, how are you gonna maintain these if we have
What they're
a
gonna,
power outage?
right,
I've
they'll
got a
have,
generator for sale, that's the reason I'm asking.
all right.
Give me a good deal.
What the current plan is, they would have a portable generator, and they would have to rotate between lift stations.
Okay,
Until, in the future, I suppose they could probably budget to try and get, permanent generators at each location. That's a little ways down the road.
okay.
If my memory serves, but only on the first, to me, that's the first phase, but
Original phase, that's what I like to say, so.
they can go a little bit without power, is that correct?
Yeah, there's capacity in them, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Steve, with the addition of phase 1, 2, and eventually phase 3, is the infrastructure, the piping, everything existing that all this is going to come into, is that adequate for all this additional flow? I mean, we talk about the surge tank over at the plant.
Right.
The existing infrastructure that's here that all this is going to feed into, is
It should be. That's not my department, but,
I was just
I know-
curious, because that, the town portion was put in many years ago.
right.
And it was sized accordingly, so I was just kind of curious to know.
It was sized to be extended. In fact, the rapid infiltration beds, all this stuff goes over, that goes through primary screening, which is actually physically a screen, and it goes into the aeration tanks.
Right.
And then the final stage is, it goes into the sand filter beds, which are south of the plant itself.
I was just more worried about the solids and everything coming through.
Right.
Through the existing infrastructure, once all these are all tied into that
Yeah.
main line.
So the surge tank's gonna help, but the plant was designed originally to be expanded by modules.
Right.
And even the rapid infiltration basin was it was actually built to accept these 2 phases right now. We aren't having to do anything to the rapid infiltration basins.
But once everyone's at CBC and flushing the toilets, I want to make sure it's going to go through downtown where they're going to bank.
It should be.
That's a good question.
Just, I'm
Yeah.
going to be the devil's advocate here, but,
I can tell you the plant could use more flow. It helps.
I'm not worried about the plant, but I'm worried about the idea of pipe.
Yeah.
So,
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I know, talking mainly in phase 1 and 2, which are on the way, but I am in phase 3, and I am very curious about, I know there was funding, grant money that was secured for phase 3, which I believe is diverted towards the plant perhaps, but what can you tell us about phase 3? Timeline, I think we're all down in that Greenland
Right.
subdivision.
I haven't been involved in the phase 3 planning, so I don't know if Trudy's been talking with Aaron lately or not.
I have not,
Okay.
So I have no update for you with regard to
where all the houses are on the river. They're doing all this stuff for houses that aren't even on the river, so this is supposed to.
Where on the river? Where is the river
For
north
all
of the
the
bridge?
canals, straight
I mean, the reason why we're doing this is because it's to save the waterways, right? So most of the houses that are on the water are like on Gratiot, F Blossom, Greenland. We're not even paying for it, it's $1 million.
Well, Trudy, I think you already filled out the paperwork for phase three with EPA.
Yes. Yes, there is a grant it's with the EPA at this point. I'm still waiting for a callback. The waiting game. So some of the questions that you've asked, some of us have asked, if we're going to, and you have to understand, as Igla has explained to me, water creates its own path and likes to run towards water. So let's use the area behind Modern Pharmacy and the health center, Birchfield. If we think about that area, it's a little bit higher. As it runs, there's a canal there. Help me with the name of that road.
It's Birchfield and then the canal and then.
Yes.
Yeah.
So as it was explained to me, water will find its way and it will run towards water. So the example used was that area because it is a little bit higher. There are some homes that are tucked back in the woods behind Caldwell Banker and Modern RX that you don't really see. They're tucked up in the woods. And they had some concerns about their artesian wells. So what we want to think about is when the sewer goes, if the sewer wasn't in and we received an inordinate amount of rain, anything that's on the ground, in the ground, on the streets is going to run towards the canal first, because that's the first step. And if it is past that, it's going to hit the lake. So to your point, we have to think about where's the lowest lying areas in our community. Well, truthfully, it's along the Little Sturgeon. But that also feeds into the Indian, Burt flows through the Indian towards Mullet. We're all flowing towards the water if we were to look at a topo map. So we are trying to protect the waterways. We're also trying to give our residents access to their septic systems, which most lots aren't big enough to handle a new one.
We want to do laundry at our house.
Yeah, and do their,
I
yeah.
also do like that.
And, so-
Trudy, I think he's worried about the density of marine land. places
Yes,
like that.
and
They're-
and I think that's a valid concern. Yes.
We don't have to flow to the water, we're on the water.
Yeah, exactly. So again, if you start up on Gratiot, they're somewhat higher, you don't really see them as high, but 27 is certainly higher, and then you have the bike path, and then you have Gratiot, and then you have marine land. So again, if we were to throw a big container of water there and watch it, it would flow, right down your front stoop. So again, we want to include those areas. So, my question was always, why aren't we including all the areas? If we're gonna do this upright and do it well, let's gather it all. There's no sense in leaving a gap. But that's one person's opinion.
But weren't we allocated
You already did it.
just $1 million grant that I understood they have to upgrade the plant to accept 1 and 2, and even us, of course, it has to be upgraded, otherwise we won't be able to connect to it either.
That's my understanding as
But
well.
the money was allocated for phase 3. It was moved to upgrade the plant, and I understand it has to be done.
Mhm.
But now you're talking about another $1 million grant that's gonna pay for somebody else's pumps, and we're still not being.
No, it's the same money. Help me out here.
It's the same $1 million, but it's
So
not
you've upgraded
grant.
the plant on money you don't have already?
Wait a minute. I'm sorry. Go
It's
ahead.
congressional money, it's never, okay, totally converted into grant paper. Yeah, for us to sign.
Okay.
So how have you upgraded the plant with $1 million that you don't have if you're still waiting on the grant? It's going through to pay for other stuff with congressional money. Doesn't make any sense.
Well, again, we're using Eagle grant money to pay for plant upgrades. And my understanding is once this grant comes back from EPA, then we'll have to, that'll be a journal entry for lack of a better phrase. to reimburse that fund. So then that those monies would be earmarked towards, because certainly phase 3 will be as large as phase 1 or 2, or possibly bigger.
Yeah, and we're all touching the water. but
Exactly.
filter through the water, we're not on the water.
Yes, yes. So again, in my mind's eye, we want to collect all of those on the water as well as those uphill from you. Otherwise, it seems we haven't closed the circle. Yes, ma'am?
It just needs to be fair to go back and look at history.
Yes,
Greenland had a chance at the same time in phase 1 and phase 2 to do the sewer system through their petitions, and they couldn't come up with their 50%.
okay.
Yeah.
So that's history unknown to me. Thanks for that. Yeah. Yes, sir.
I have kind of 2 questions. One, I'm under the impression the sewer is only for homes and businesses. It's not runoff from the streets or
Stormwater,
stormwater. That's what I was.
correct.
Okay, because when you were saying dumping a bunch of water, would be more stormwater.
Well, you have to think about the flow of water.
I
That was the
understand.
analogy.
I
But you bring up a good point. We have also storm drains that have been uncovered as we've done, and I'm thinking of the,
The county, the county,
right, yes.
we've been working hand in hand with the county foreman and finding his stuff, helping him, upgrade a few things here and there and fix stuff that sometimes we have to go through it and then we'll replace it. But
I
also,
just wanted to make sure I understood it correctly. Maybe someday you'll go to stormwater. but
Well, thank you, because yes, I've had that conversation with Aaron, because one was uncovered here on Floyd Street, and I made a comment about, oh geez, I didn't know that one, and he said, it's always been there. We just didn't see it because it was covered with dirt, debris, vegetation, and in the course of putting it in the system, a lot of them have been uncovered. And I asked the question, so tell me, where does the stormwater go? And he said, where do you think it goes? Water runs towards water. And I cringed, and he said, that's a topic for another day.
Yes, it is.
There are some tanks.
Okay,
Because we have had to. pump them.
Overflow.
Yeah, we've had to, have those pumped out in the
Right.
past.
right. So, this is again, more questions that, for me, at this point in time, more questions than answers, a little more digging, asking people at the county level, what is an actual drain and what is a cistern, for lack of a better phrase, and where do we go from here? But again, as Aaron has assured me, that's another day's discussion.
One last that I have is, who's gonna run the plant? Are you going to do a management company? Are you going to hire people locally and have your own equipment, et cetera?
We currently contract with Mead and Hunt.
Okay.
We have 2 operators out there. Right now, for our township, it's the most cost-effective way to operate the plant. My understanding, and I think Mr. Kramer made this reference at least at 2 meetings that I've been in and attended, a wastewater treatment plant operator is a very hot commodity. We, at this point in time, don't have the funding. So we have a very nice contract. They are very responsive.
Somebody's ahead of the game.
Yeah.
But not all the time the management companies are the right answer. And that's why
I agree. Right now, we have a very nice relationship with
that's
them,
nice to know.
and they do a great job.
And it's also difficult to find anybody with the licensing that's needed, to run the plants. They're getting few and far between.
Is there a way of kind of making, like, City of Sheboygan, having them oversee it, or maybe over here in Harbor Springs, have them oversee it?
That's a good question. I know Tammy, who is one of our operators, and she does travel from plant to plant. And I think Jennifer is here pretty much with us full-time, if I'm not mistaken, and Tammy travels, and is now traveling throughout the Midwest, handling other wastewater treatment plants. So
That's a good thing.
exactly. And so what we have is a nice relationship. I'm very comfortable with them. They're very knowledgeable.
And they're competitive.
Right.
That's fine.
They suffer like a lot of the trades right now. It's just hard to grow them.
Yeah.
You know, none of the younger folks are really interested
It's a good job.
in getting into it. Yeah, it can be, but just about every trade you talk to,
Yeah.
it's graying out because the young folks just aren't interested in starting at the bottom and
We
working
don't
their way
want to
up.
work in that kind of situation.
Well, interestingly, we had a meeting with some young people from Inland Lake Schools, and they wanted to talk about the waterways here, and they wanted to go out and tour the wastewater treatment plant, and Tammy was very accommodating for them. So, never say never. Other questions?
I got one more.
Yes, sir.
I have an extra lot. If I wanted to have a lead put up to that lot, I wouldn't be using it. Would I have to pay the 18,000, or can I just pay the contractor to get it up there for me?
You would have to pay the buy-in.
I would have to pay the entire 18,000 on a sewer that goes nowhere.
Well, at this point in time, it goes nowhere.
This is one, I was talking with Charlie yesterday.
Okay.
His situation, he's got a lot further past the one that we're leaving his lateral for.
So they're not contiguous?
No, they're next to each other, but they're not joined, but it's also, it's not on it's not on the road.
Hmm.
You'd have to go through his lot to get to it, you know, but he never joined them. So if you
I
want,
couldn't combine them because there's a section line 24 and 25. And so when we went to the engineer, he said, you can't do this. So my
Yeah.
question is, can I have a lead if I pay for the contractor to get it up there? But I don't want to pay the 18,000 because why would I pay that?
and that's a discussion I was gonna have with Aaron. Aaron's been out of the office
Okay.
off and on the last 2 days, and I just talked to him about this yesterday.
Yeah,
But yeah,
thank you.
like an option would be, we physically put in a Y for him, but he knows that he can't hook it up because you guys know that he hasn't paid his assessment for that lot. But it would make sense to,
Well, it's better than going back into the road, tearing the road all up, cutting the T in, you know what I mean? Down the road.
what actually, my more sense, we just leave one lateral, but leave it at a 6 inch. And then if he ever wants to tap into that on his own, he still would have, you guys know about it now, because we're telling you, that you have to pay the 18,000. But we just have the one lateral as a 6 inch coming out. And so, but I haven't had that discussion with Aaron, but it just happened yesterday.
Sure.
Can we get some sort of a timeline on phase 3? How are you gonna plan to address it or get back to us on it, or what are we looking at?
There's,
Not when it's gonna happen, but when you're actually gonna look into it, or.
well, I'll tell you, phase 1 is 50%, 70, 60% completed, what would you say?
We're close to 50 on the LPS, and we're probably 80% on the gravity one.
Okay,
It'll be done this year.
okay, so let's say by June 28th it's done, phase 1 residential is done. Then we have to start phase 2 residential, and this phase 1 residential has taken 18 months-ish?
The contractor's telling us, last month he said his plan is to be done this year.
Okay,
We don't know if that's gonna happen.
if it's feasible,
It depends how wet it is out there.
yeah.
You know, but,
So to this gentleman's question, and Chris, how far in advance, and maybe you can tell me, Stephen, how far in advance were the drawings done? And there's legal work that has to be done. So I'm not the one to tell you that. I'm the one to ask the questions, and I think that's fair. Your questions are very fair. But if I'm using Stephen's and the contractor's guidelines, we're at least a year or two out, at least, would be my guesstimation.
And without grants or loans, you're talking a huge, huge fiscal payment.
Right. So, you know, we're gonna have to really start digging into, and making some contacts with, the powers that be to help us with funding.
Is it federal EPA you're waiting for, or state EPA?
I believe it's federal.
all I know is I'm not a design engineer. They give them to me and I try to bring them in on time and on budget, and that's what I'm trying to do on these two right now, so. Right now, we're looking right.
I'm just making notes about phase 3. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, thank you for coming. We have our regular monthly township board business meeting at 7. Feel free to stay. Thank you.